You know, life has a beautiful way of changing quietly. When two people fall in love, everything feels new, radiant, and full of promise. Each glance carries excitement, and even the smallest gestures feel like magic. But as time passes, that brightness can begin to fade, not because the love disappears, but because routine gently replaces wonder. This story begins with a couple who, on the surface, seem to have everything. A stable home, steady jobs, and the comfort that many people dream of. Yet somewhere between the responsibilities, the bills, and the quiet evenings, their happiness began to soften, like colors that fade slowly under sunlight. The husband, a thoughtful man with a calm voice and kind eyes, always noticed the little things. He saw how his wife often stayed quiet in conversations, how her smile, though gentle, carried a trace of distance. She wasn't unhappy, just uncertain. She was a quiet soul, polite, warm, but shy in her own way. Crowds made her uneasy. Meeting new people drained her energy. Even a casual conversation with strangers could make her heart race. It wasn't fear exactly, more like a wall she didn't know how to climb. The husband never judged her for that. In fact, he loved her deeply for who she was. But as years went by, he couldn't help noticing how her world seemed smaller. And so, he began searching for answers. But the internet can be a noisy place. Too many opinions, too few real answers. Nothing he found seemed to reach her heart.
Ah, おやすみ。
ねえ、
うん？
お隣の山田さん妊娠したんだって。
へえ。
私もそろそろ子供いたらいいなって思うんだけど。
そっか。
あなた欲しくないの？
うん。
おやすみなさい。
ああ、おやすみ。私の代わりに子作りをしてくれる男がいればどんなに興奮できることか。
いやー、なかなか厳しいっすね。そうだな、商品部に現状説明しないと俺たちだけじゃ無理だよな。そうですね。あ、ちょっと休憩しましょう。そうですね。
Until one ordinary afternoon, while having coffee at work, he overheard a colleague talk about something called the Connection Garden. It wasn't a place he'd ever heard of, but the way his colleague described it caught his attention. It wasn't therapy. It wasn't a seminar. It was more like a living space, a quiet garden where people gathered to talk, share, and simply be. No judgment, no pressure, just human connection. That night, he mentioned it to his wife. She hesitated, of course. The thought of meeting strangers, of being part of something unfamiliar, it scared her a little. But there was something gentle in his voice when he said, "Let's just go for a walk there. We don't have to talk to anyone. Just see what it's like." And so she agreed, not because she was ready, but because she trusted him. The next morning, the couple drove to the edge of the city, where the air smelled of fresh leaves and distant flowers. There, beyond a simple wooden gate, lay a beautiful space, open, calm, and filled with laughter that somehow didn't feel loud. The husband smiled, feeling a quiet sense of hope. The wife, on the other hand, stood silently beside him, her hands clasped nervously. But for the first time in a long while, her eyes softened, not from fear, but from curiosity.
意外に近かったわね。
ああ、そうだな。渋滞もなかったしな。
やっぱ空気が違うわね。
ああ、そうだろう。
Sometimes, the first step toward change doesn't begin with confidence. It begins with willingness. The willingness to try, to see, to take one small step forward. And as they walked deeper into the garden, surrounded by strangers who greeted them with genuine smiles, neither of them knew that this simple visit would soon transform the way they saw themselves, each other, and what it truly means to reconnect. After a long journey, they finally arrived. The garden seemed alive, not with noise, but with a gentle, warm rhythm.
いらっしゃいませ。予約した佐伯です。佐伯様ですね。どうぞ、中にお入りください。どうも。どうぞ。どうぞ、いらっしゃいませ。
It was unlike the city, where conversations were often hurried and laughter met with deadlines. Here, time seemed to breathe differently. Every sound, the buzz of insects, the rustle of leaves, the soft whispers of people created a harmony that enveloped them like sunlight on skin. A few visitors were sitting nearby, sketching or writing. The wife hesitated. Her instinct told her to say no, to step back, to watch instead of joining. But her husband's hand found hers, warm and steady. "Let's just sit for a while," he whispered softly. So they did. The group wasn't large, just 6 or 7 people of different ages. An older woman was talking about her garden at home, how caring for plants helped her heal after losing her job. A young man shared how he used to be afraid of speaking in front of others, and how this place helped him find his voice again. There were no speeches, no instructions, just stories. And somehow, that made all the difference. The wife sat quietly, listening. At first, her shoulders were stiff, her eyes downcast. But as the minutes passed, something inside her began to soften. These people were strangers, yes, but their words carried warmth, the kind that made her realize she wasn't alone in feeling small sometimes. Everyone here was growing, in their own way. When someone finished telling a story, there was a moment of silence. Then someone gently asked, "Is there anything else you would like to share?" The wife felt her heart race. 1,000 thoughts filled her head. What if I say the wrong thing? What if they think I'm strange? But before fear could win, the husband gave her a reassuring look, one that said, "It's okay. You don't have to be perfect. Just be you." And so, for the first time in a long while, she spoke. The group listened, really listened, without interrupting, without judgment. And just like that, something inside her began to shift. For the first time, she felt seen, not for her quietness, not for her hesitation, but for her honesty. The garden, in its gentle simplicity, had given her space to be real. Later that day, a small celebration took place, a simple gathering with tea, fruit, and handmade pastries. There was no grand music, no performance, just people enjoying one another's presence. The wife found herself laughing softly at a joke someone made, It wasn't forced. It was natural, almost surprising. The husband watched from nearby, a quiet smile on his face. He didn't interrupt. He didn't try to guide her. He simply let her be, and in that moment, he realized something beautiful. Growth doesn't always come from pushing forward. Sometimes it blossoms when we simply feel safe enough to open. And in that gentle glow of evening, surrounded by laughter and kindness, the garden had done something subtle but extraordinary. It had reminded her that confidence isn't the absence of fear. It's the courage to stay open, even when fear whispers. Sometimes the most meaningful changes begin not with a leap, but with a small, brave step toward connection. Their visit to the connection garden felt different, lighter somehow. The wife smiled more. For the husband, it felt like spring returning after a long winter. In that moment, the wife realized something she hadn't seen before. Growth wasn't a straight line. It was messy, full of stops and starts, small victories, and quiet setbacks. The important thing wasn't perfection. It was persistence. Instead of worrying about what to say, she focused on listening, really listening. The wife felt her heart soften again. Their pain didn't make her feel smaller. It made her feel connected. Everyone here carried invisible stories, just like her. Sometimes she thinks the hardest thing isn't talking to other people. It's forgiving herself for being afraid. She thought about her husband, his patience, his warmth, and the way he believed in her, even when she didn't. And she realized something profound. Love isn't just about sharing joy. It's about standing quietly beside someone as they rediscover themselves. For both of them, it wasn't just progress, it was healing. Sometimes, life teaches us through silence, through moments when we think we're failing, but are actually growing stronger. The garden hadn't just changed the wife. It was slowly transforming the way they loved, listened, and believed in each other. The connection garden. It became their quiet ritual, a place not only to escape the noise of everyday life, but also to reconnect with themselves and each other. The wife, too, began to see things differently. For so long, she had believed that being quiet was a flaw, that confidence meant being loud, outspoken, and bold. But here, among people who shared openly and listened kindly, she discovered something else. Confidence could also mean being calm, honest, and present. The garden helped them realize that happiness doesn't always come from chasing something new. Sometimes it grows when we nurture what's already within us: patience, empathy, understanding, and love. The people they met there, the laughter they shared, the stories they heard, all became part of their journey. This wasn't just a garden of plants. It was a garden of people. Each visitor had planted something intangible: trust, kindness, encouragement. And together, they had created something beautiful. In the end, love isn't just about holding on. It's about growing together, learning to listen, and finding the courage to open our hearts again. In life, happiness doesn't vanish. It simply waits for us to rediscover it. Sometimes, all it takes is patience, kindness, and the courage to open our hearts once more. Like the connection garden, love flourishes when we nurture it, gently, daily, and together. This short film reminds us, sometimes the key to happiness is not to change who we are, but to open our hearts again. True love grows when we nurture it, gently, daily, and together.